Good morning, dear friends. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook. All of us here in the sanctuary welcome you who are joining us online. Let's all wave to the folks at home through the camera on your left. I welcome you who are here in our sanctuary and all who are attending virtually, wherever you may be this morning. My name is Lorraine Stidd, and I'm happy to be your worship associate this morning. Our interim minister is the Reverend Dr. Madeline Campbell, who will be back on the pulpit next week, and our director of religious education is Deb Little. I'm delighted to be serving with the Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore this morning. Reverend Natalie is the lead minister and Minister of Religious Education at the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock in Manhasset here on Long Island. She has been a UU religious professional for over 25 years, serving congregations in Maryland, Virginia, and New York. Among Reverend Natalie's volunteer roles include the UUA Commission on Institutional Change, President of the Liberal Religious Educators Association, member of the Board of Trustees of Starr King School for the Ministry, and the UU Ministers Association Board. Reverend Natalie has preached the UUA service of the living tradition and is a contributing writer to several UUA publications. We're very happy to have you this morning, and I know Reverend Natalie has been here before, so welcome back. Please plan to join us after the service for coffee and conversation. For those who are with us online, if you sign off after the service and return to our website, you will find the link for joining our small group chats. Whether here or online, you will find some friendly folks who can answer any questions you may have. I have one important invitation for you this morning. At our annual meeting in June, our Board of Trustees will be including a congregational vote on the recommendation that the congregation of the UUFSB signs their resolution making us official supporters of the Suffolk County Just Stop Unjust Stops campaign. To give everyone a chance to be informed about this campaign and the resolution, the Racial Concerns Committee, which has been part of the core leadership team of the JSUS campaign, invites you all to remain following our service today, either here or online, for an informational session featuring special guest speakers Emily Kaufman and Terrell Dozier, which will begin at 12:15 after our coffee hour and small group chats. Copies of the resolution are available in the front lobby, and for those attending online, there will be a link to it in the chat. And one other thing, just was a last minute, I would like to thank Bethany Riddle for stepping in this morning. Joanne Hammer had an issue in her home, so thank you, Bethany. Now, please allow your mind to settle and your heart to open as we enter our time of worship with the sounding of the bell.
This is a song by Pete Seeger, who died several years ago. He wrote it for a movie called Tell Me That You Love Me, Junie Moon. Old devil time, I'm gonna fool you now. Old devil time, you'd like to bring me down. But when I'm feeling low, my lovers gather round and help me rise to fight you one more time. One more time, one more time, and help me rise to fight you one more time. Old devil pain, you often pinned me down. You thought I'd cry and beg you for the end, but at that very time my lovers gathered round and helped me rise to fight you one more time. One more time, one more time, and helped me rise fight you one more time. Old devil fear, you with your icy hands. Old devil fear, you'd like to freeze me cold. But when I'm so afraid, my lovers gather round and help me rise to fight you one more time. One more time, one more time, and help me rise to fight you one more time. Old devil hate, I knew you long ago. Then I found out the poison in your breath. Now when we hear your voice, my lovers gather round and help me rise to fight you one more time. One more time, one more time, and help me rise to fight you one more time. No storm or fire can ever beat us down. No wind that blows but carries us further on. And you who fear, oh lovers, gather round, and we will rise to sing it one more time. One more time, one more time, and we will rise to sing it one more time.
Thank you, Mike. I call us to worship with these words. Come, enter into this space made holy by our presence. Enter into this hour made holy by our intention. Let us put our busyness aside for this hour. As we join in community here together, let us worship together.
I have asked Jason Bond to light our chalice this morning. If you are joining us from home, perhaps you would like to light your own chalice or candle. The flaming chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. In the spirit of love, we light our chalice this morning with words from an anonymous source. We light the chalice of our religious heritage. We do this for our ancestors who taught us through their various religious traditions and by their actions for justice and hope. We do this for our children who are learning the traditions we teach and who learn more from our actions than our words. We do this for ourselves so that we are inspired to remember our beginnings, reflect on who we are now, and spread our wings as we understand who we seek to become. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Now is our time for Tale for All Ages, and do not adjust your glasses or your screens. I am not Deb Little, but I am honored to share this with you as she is on a field trip with some of our RE children. I'd like to share a beautiful book by the name of Stacey Abrams and the Fight to Vote, written by Tracy and Todd, illustrated by Laura Friedman. If you'd like to take a look at this later, I'll have it with me. Our time for all ages this morning is about voting rights. Why? Because democracy and voting are among UU core values. When we center love and share it out in the world, we take action to make our values live. Right now, the right to vote is under attack. UU the Vote is working to help everyone vote. So let's begin our story. It's an imagined conversation between civil rights activists Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Septina Poinsett Clark. In that faraway place where the ancestors sit, Fannie Lou heard something on the wind. Georgia's citizens tried to exercise their constitutional rights and were still denied. Our fight to count every vote is not about me. It is about us. Fannie Lou called her friend Septima, who knew many things. Look here, Fannie Lou said, who is that? Talking about votes and rights denied. Septima looked. Oh, yes, she smiled. That's Stacey Abrams having her say. She's one of us. Why don't you call Ida and Sojourner? They'll want to hear this story, too. It starts in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where Stacy's parents, Caroline and Robert, fell in love. Growing up, Caroline didn't have much, and of course, Jim Crow made a hard life even harder. Those horrible laws, said Ida. Seems like they should have given it a tougher name than Jim Crow for all the harm and hurt they caused. Caroline and Robert married and had 6 children. Stacy was number 2. They taught their children that one of the best ways to take care of their community is to vote, to elect people and make choices that would make the community stronger. It was a right they had both fought for, and every election day, they took their children to the polling place, closed the curtain, and imagined something more. Stacy had a head for imagining, too, thanks to all those books she read. Since Caroline was a librarian, Stacy never ran out of things to read. Stacy went on to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. She found space to protest, organize, question, and discover. She met influential people like the college president who nurtured her ambitions and the mayor who offered her a job. Stacy wondered what being a mayor would be like. She added it to her list of things to accomplish. And did she become mayor? Fannie Lou asked. No, Septima replied. She decided to run for governor instead. Excuse me. Stacy listened to what people had to say, helped thousands register to vote. It seemed like she might become the first black woman ever elected governor in the United States. The first ever? Ida said. What year are we talking about? Oh, this was 2018, Septima replied. Guess I shouldn't be surprised we had to wait this long. We're still waiting, Ida. Stacy didn't win. Well, what happened? You know that each state keeps a list of people who can vote, Septima replied. Well, somehow, hundreds of thousands of names disappeared from Georgia's list, and there weren't enough places to vote. And the lines were too long, and the voting machines didn't work. And you know who was in charge of all this mess? The man who won the election. Sojourner asked, the people who couldn't vote, were they black like you and me? Oh, many of them, yes, said Septima. Sojourner closed her eyes and sighed. We fought so hard. I remember, said Ida, I fought for our rights with white women who called me sister, then pushed me aside when they thought the South was watching. In the end, we won the right to vote on paper, but those Southern mayors and governors did everything they could to keep it from being true. They surely did, said Fannie Lou, with poll taxes, reading tests, and much, much worse. I remember I once took folks to register to vote in an old school bus. The police stopped us because they said the bus was too yellow. We fought so hard, Sojourner sighed again. The ancestors were quiet. The wind was not. Septima shared, this is their fight now, sisters. Will it truly be different this time, Sojourner asked. Septima smiled. I hope it will. In fact, see that child there? The one listening close and imagining? The ancestors nodded. That child is one of us, too. Amen. Now, would you please open to the back of your hymnal and find the Reeb Children's Benediction. Would the kindergarten to 4th grade teachers go to the R wing door and our children can follow them? Our middle school youth are visiting a Catholic church this morning, and our youth group will meet here in the sanctuary at 12:15 after getting some food. Please look for Peggy and our other teachers in the wing. Let's sing the children out now, please.
Following our meditation in word, we will sit in silence for a minute, and then we will sing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. You are invited to light a candle of joy or sorrow during the service today, right over here. You might wish to do it during the meditation or perhaps during the offering. We enter now a time of meditation or prayer. So often we are asked to love, but what are we required to do to demonstrate love? I offer for reflection these words from Eusebius, a Greek Christian leader who died in 300 AD. May I be no one's enemy, and may I be the friend of that which is eternal and abides. May I wish for every person's happiness and envy none. May I never rejoice in the ill fortune of one who has wronged me. May I, to the extent of my power, give needful help to all who are in want. May I never fail a friend. May I respect myself. May I always keep tame that which rages within me. May I accustom myself to be gentle and never be angry with others because of circumstances. May I know good people and follow in their footsteps. I ask that we hear these words and open our hearts to love, wondrous love. So may it be.
The light of the candles holds many hopes and dreams, holds our sadness, our sorrow, our grief, also our joy, our celebration. That light which it brings into the room is in our hearts, and we hold it there. We hold it here amongst each other because it is important that we know we are not alone. I offer this reading from Reinhold Niebuhr. Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime. Therefore, we are saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we are saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. No virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own. Therefore, we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. Thank you for inviting me here to your beautiful space. You can look outside and see the changing seasons. So I say to our Muslim friends and neighbors, happy Ramadan. As the seasons changes around us and we approach spring, despite the sort of, relative pleasantness of this winter, we still long for spring. Our wishes are for a world of renewal, rebirth, and love. We long for the sunshine to warm our bodies and souls. We want to follow nature into bloom. We want to live in a world where we love one another. But it's hard. Given the unyielding spikes of hatred in our world, it is almost impossible to believe in the possibility of a world of love. And it may indeed be impossible if we only think of love as a feeling. Can we believe in love as an action, as a set of actions? In the well-known story of the Good Samaritan, the Rabbi Jesus is asked by a lawyer, "What shall I do to inherit eternal life?" The answer from Jesus is to love God and your neighbor as yourself. And the lawyer then asked Jesus the follow-up question, "Who is my neighbor?" Then Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. Samaritans were perceived as enemies of Jews. But who helped the injured Jew there on the side of the road but the Samaritan, while all the other Jews in the story did not stop to help? The short answer Jesus was giving is this: your neighbor is probably someone you don't notice, don't care about, don't think much about. Your neighbor is probably someone you're afraid of, or ignorant about, or feel separated from, or judge harshly. Or, there's always a reason for you to consider someone not your neighbor. It seems that Jesus might have thought that anyone and everyone could be your neighbor, is in fact your neighbor, and wondrous love might find a way for you to connect with that other. And what of love? Of loving your neighbor. In the story of the Good Samaritan, the example given is to stop and notice the hurt of another and help them out. Provide care, provide food, provide housing. Take a moment to think about even the little thing you can give to help somebody out. In the Jewish rabbinical tradition, Rabbi Hillel was challenged to recite the entire Jewish law while standing on one foot. And he did. He said, "What is hateful to you, you shall not do unto your neighbor." That's it. He echoed the words in the book of Leviticus, "Love your neighbor as yourself," which is a core commandment in Judaism. The Jewish community of Jesus' upbringing heard this call to value yourself, yes, and then to extend this love of self to others. To understand that it is the way that we are all born. We are of one creation. If you hate another person, you hate a version of yourself. Love is giving without expecting to take, without expectation of reward or advantage. Love is eliminating otherness. The idea of love is made manifest in acts of love. So what is the relationship of Unitarian Universalism to a theology of love? Over the last few years, the Unitarian Universalist Association has been engaged in the review of the principles and purposes of the association. The principles and purposes of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the UUA, of which this congregation is a part, are found in Article 2 of the Bylaws of the association. You would think this would be true because this is who we are as Unitarians, right? We have bylaws. We got everything written down. We must argue about it constantly. The group leading the review of the principles and purposes is often called the Article 2 Commission. But Article 2 is Article 2 of the Bylaws. This review of the bylaws happens about every 15 years or so because it is itself the review in the bylaws. It represents this understanding that ours is a living faith tradition that needs to consider its relevance on a regular basis, and that the UU principles are actually not a creedal statement. We have learned to recite them, but we are a non-creedal faith tradition. That is, the UU principles are not really supposed to be a statement that we memorize and recite as our common statement of belief to which we pledge. They've always been open to discussion, our principles, open to reflection and individual and community interpretations. We are at this moment actively challenging the relevance of the principles that we have known for the future. Are our current principles relevant to carry us into the future? In past times, the principles have been changed. The language has been modified and edited. At one point, you may know, the principles were more Christian-centered than they are now. They were definitely more male-centered than they are now. And they have been challenged over time, and the text changed. Depending on your point of view, the principles have been more humanist or more scientific at some points, more spiritual at others. The principles have expanded beyond any exclusively Christian and Jewish context. The General Assembly voted to change or adopt the UU principles and sources in 1960, in 1984, and in 1995. So if you grew up as a Unitarian Universalist before 1960, or 1964, or 1995, you actually knew different principles than the ones we have today. Individual congregations have added an eighth principle, which declares our anti-racist intentions. Because of the way we are structured, individual congregations may have principles different from the association's principles. So there are 7 in some places, there are 8 in some places. Who knows how many there are in some other places? The eighth principle is called that, but actually none of our principles are numbered. None really has any priority over the other. None is in first place and none is in last place. But it's true that we've gotten used to, gotten accustomed to the principles as they are. We've gotten accustomed to reciting them. We've got accustomed to memorizing them, to using the current language, to talking about them in a certain order. It's a shortcut way often for us to explain ourselves and our community to those outside and those coming in. We like to say, we believe this, here are our principles, blah, 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 blah. Right? The Article 2 Commission is offering us a different way to explain and understand ourselves. A new statement of purpose, values, and covenant instead of principle. The Article 2 Commission uses these words. The Unitarian Universalist Association shall devote its resources to and exercise its organizational powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. Its primary purpose is to equip congregations for vital ministry, to support and train leaders, both lay and professional, to heal historic inequities, and to advance our Unitarian Universalist values in the world. We will transform the world by our liberating love. Right? We will transform the world by our liberating love. Love, it goes on to say, is the enduring force that holds us together. As Unitarian Universalists and religious community, we covenant, congregation to congregation and through our association, to support and assist each other in engaging our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom and reason, hope and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love inspires and powers the passion with which we embody our values. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are pluralism, transformation, justice, generosity, equity, interdependence. You've probably seen the graphic. It's actually on your order of service. This circle of love at the center, which represents love as central, the enduring force which holds together Unitarian Universalists. And then the shared values that points us to acts of love, which make real our values and covenant. This circle of love surrounded by the shared values of pluralism, transformation, justice, generosity, equity, and interdependence. I already hear people talking about this like as our flower, right? And the petals. Well, I'm not going to say anything to anybody about what people should think about that. And eventually how people should vote in this review and renewal process. I know that for many it's come as a complete surprise that we were doing this. Even though it's been years in the making, it's been during the pandemic years, and I am very clear that you had other things to think about besides bylaw changes. It may just be coming to your attention right now that in June we will be voting on this. The Article 2 Commission's work has been exhaustive, but as I say, taking place in the middle of a time when you were otherwise occupied. And anyway, most people are not among those who eat and drink institutional process and bylaws. What I am asking, is that you take some time between now and June, because this will be voting on in June as a final vote. Take some time with the principles and purposes. Discuss it. Try to understand what it means for you. Consider the proposed changes and how you think and feel about them, how you might live with them, into them. Get copies of the full proposal, which are online. And there are additional conversations you'll hear about in many congregational settings and at General Assembly. Whether or not you agree with the changes to the principles, of course, being ourselves, there will be debate. There will be wordsmithing. There are already proposed amendments and changes and edits to wording. No matter what the wording comes down to in the end, what I am struck wondering is where our faith comes down on the centrality of love. It isn't about the words, the commas, the semicolons, the colons, the parentheses. Where does our faith come down on the centrality of love? Does changing the principles make this question of love as an action, more common among us for discussion, for action? Where does love fit into our theology? In our congregations? Here. In our lives? Both here and out in the world. Do we believe that love is the enduring force that holds us together? Do we want it to be? And if we want it to be, then how do we turn that idea of love into acts of love? How do we come to commonly understand acts of love? How do we structure our worship, our programs, our youth activities, so that they are acts of love? How do we structure the ways in which we are together in ways that are acts of love? One of my favorite hymns is "What Wondrous Love Is This." It's an old Quaker hymn. Now, today we think of the Quakers as pretty much wonderful themselves, a small liberal Christian peace church out doing good in the world. But at their beginnings in 17th century England, their religion was outlawed and its members were persecuted and sent to prisons. They were a threat because they believed in each person's inner light. They saw the holy inner light in every person. Everyone. For that, they were persecuted. But their commitment to that belief enabled them to sing their way to prison. So when I hear their hymn, I hear people determined to push away anger, hate, and despair. I see a people determined to bring to life a faith of loving kindness, even when love was not shown to them. Are we such people? Their Christian meditative practice was much like a Buddhist practice. It contained that mystical quality of strength and force found in quiet and stillness. This is not a passive love, but a love that demands truth and justice. A love that includes power and strength and determination. As the Universalists say, a love that won't let me down, a love that won't let me go, a love that won't let me off. Is this our love? This is a wondrous love. Like the love that had business owners stretching extension cords to their electrical outlets to sidewalk refrigerators so folks would not go hungry during the lockdown. The love that filled our communities and held us together to support families who were isolated during the pandemic. This is the love that enabled our country to use the child tax credit to uplift 3 million children out of poverty, but also can't get us to re-up that bill. We, as individuals and as a community, we did these things. We gave without first asking what's in it for me. Can we do that on a regular, everyday basis without the need for a pandemic that might have been the end of the world? Does it take us to get to the end of the world before we can lift children out of poverty or feed our neighbor? People gave because they could. It was wonderful. Even in the midst of hard times, the light that shone through the knowledge of our capacity as human beings to care for one another was there. It was a gift of the terrible time of the pandemic. I hope it is a lesson for us about how we could choose to live even without the terrible time of the pandemic. Can we find a way to continue to explore our ability to know the centrality of love and perform acts of love which hold us together? As we look at changing our principles to a covenant which speaks to the centrality of love, don't just let it be something that we put on a piece of paper. Understand that if we vote to change our bylaws to make love central to our religious tradition, we are making a commitment to a love of action. I would say, while I do not tell anyone ever how to vote, don't do it if you're not committed to what it is calling us to do and be. Changing our principles, even if they are not currently relevant to us, will not matter if we are not also committed to what those changes call us to do. May ours be a community of such wondrous love. Thank you. It is now time for a stewardship moment, and I invite Gina Talento to the pulpit.
Good morning. Well, when Judd asked me to do this morning, I thought, I'm new. I haven't even been here a year. What can I really have to say about stewardship here in the fellowship? But he was like, you know what? We need to hear from new people too, so get up there and just tell everybody what it's been like for you to become a part of the fellowship. I'm like, okay then. I know you all would rather be up here right now, but it's my turn today. I found my way to this fellowship because I was looking for a worship community where I could be my authentic self, my just Gina, just my true self, where I didn't have to say things I didn't believe or be a part of values that wounded my spirit, just to feel like I had some place to be or be a member of a group. And to say that I found that here at this fellowship is an understatement, because what I found here has been so much more. When thinking about how to describe coming into this fellowship for me today, I was at a loss for words. And people who know me know that that doesn't happen there very often. But I guess I have to be grateful for the traffic that I hit on the LIE this week, because as I was driving into work, a word popped into my head, and I literally laughed out loud because it was so perfect, unexpectedly perfect. The word is dame. I learned dame in Maite's Cuban salsa dance class here at the fellowship. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Cuban salsa, we dance in a circle in a group, and there are leaders and followers. During the dance, I'm a follower in this, we are dancing with a leader on our right. When Maite calls a dame, the follower has to open up, facing into the circle, and get their arm all the way up, creating the space for the leader on the left to come in, scoop them up, a little bit of a twirl, and then back into the dance. Now, Maite is very clear in her directions. During dame, you have to be open. You cannot block the leader, and you cannot hit them in the head. You have to be all the way up and open. So in thinking that, that has been what it has been like for me coming into this fellowship. Because coming into anything new is always difficult. And every time that I've put myself out there, stepped in, and participated in all of the amazing activities here, and put my arm up, I've been scooped. I've been scooped. So I'm grateful for that. And I honestly don't know the exact moment that it happened when I was pulling into the parking lot here, that I no longer felt like a visitor or a guest, but I felt like I belonged. So, all I had to do was show up to the dance, get my arm up, and thank you all so much for scooping me.
Thank you, Gina. At each service, it is our spiritual practice to take a collection, which we share with a local organization working for a more just future. Our Share the Plate recipient for the month of March is Bethel Hobbs Community Farm, located in the neighboring town of Center Reach. This farm was established by the Hobbs family in the early part of the 20th century, and it was the last African-American-owned farm on Long Island. Upon the death of Alfred Hobbs in 1996, the property was left to the Bethel AME Church. The farm is now managed as a 501c-3 by the Friends of Hobbs Farm. It has over 5 acres in cultivation and provides an average of 30,000 pounds of fresh, organic produce to local food pantries and soup kitchens. They also have an education center, which hosts events for small groups, a community garden with garden plots for individuals, and a wheelchair-accessible garden with raised beds. Their farm stand is open on Saturdays from 10 to 3, starting May 30th. For some of us, March will seem very early in the year to begin thinking about this year's crops. But farming really does begin in early spring. And this is the time of year when expenses are highest and our contribution will be most needed. Please offer your generous support to the Bethel Hobbs Community Farm as they continue to plant seeds of hope. You may make your gifts in the plate or online. For those online, the link to donate is in the comments. Your gifts will be gratefully received and used well. The board members come forward, please. Thank you.
And now we dedicate our offering. Please recite the words in your order of service. To the work of our faith, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these our offerings. Amen. Thank you to the board members. Yay, yay. Gotta love those board members. I now invite you all to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our final hymn, number 18, What Wondrous Love. For our benediction, the words of James Baldwin. Nothing is fixed forever and ever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to ground down the rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light falls. Lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. And so I say, love one another. Do not let the light go out. And now we extinguish our flame, for our worship service has ended. Please respond, and our service begins. I invite you here in the sanctuary to wave goodbye to those folks online.
ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה